Hello, everyone. Today, we embark on a deeply moving journey, one that transcends borders, time, and the very fabric of human emotion. On the 8th of March 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 vanished from the radar screens, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and shattered lives. Among those affected was Mr. Narendran, whose wife was aboard flight MH370. In this episode, we sit down with Mr. Narendran to hear his story, the early days of loss, the relentless media attention, and the resilience that emerged from the depths of grief. This is more than a tale of tragedy, it's a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Mr. Narendran has also written a book, Life After MH370 Journeying Through a Void. Mr. Narendran, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for reaching out and inviting me to have a conversation with you. It's my pleasure, and I'm honored to be here with you this day.
Thank you, sir. And since both of us are from the same town, I'll just say vanakkam too. And
Vanakkam to you too.
thank you. Now, in your book, I read that sometime in the early hours of the 8th of March, you received a call from the friend of your wife and who shared the news that she saw on TV. And sometime later in the day, actually later in the afternoon, that is when you actually received confirmation, an official confirmation. Can you talk us through those hours, the first few hours?
Sure. It's 10 years is a long time, so I'll just have to journey back a little bit and jog my memory. It's fairly well etched in my recall, so maybe I will be fairly faithful to what happened. I think the way I recall that morning was at about 6:30 in the morning. I had a call from my wife's colleague, and she said that MS370 is missing. Now, I think that news didn't register really. I was just wondering why over a weekend, early in the morning, this lady should call me and tell me something that I have no clue how it connects with me and why I should even, pay another minute's thought to it. And then, I said, so what? So what about it? And then she said, no, Chandrika is on this flight. So we believe. And I said, are you sure? He said, yes, I have her booking details, and reasonably certain she was on this flight, and the flight is missing. So I said, okay. So then I was just kind of stumbling out of bed at that time. So I put on the television, and there I saw that indeed there was news flashing that there was this aircraft, Malaysian Airlines flight missing, and there was no news really at that time because it had just passed the time when it was supposed to land, perhaps an hour or so after it was supposed to land, and there was no news, and they had no clue. And so I said, okay, let me wait for news. So I kind of stuck with the television for a while. There was nothing really. So then I waited much longer. I wanted to be sure that she was indeed on the flight. So I called this lady again, and she said, no, I have a boarding pass. And then she sent the boarding pass to me. But I said, boarding pass is no proof that she was aboard the flight. In these days, you can print it in your home. That's no proof. So I said, okay, so do we have the passenger manifest? And the passenger manifest was not available. And then then began a very long wait to be certain that indeed the flight was missing. It had not landed, in some other place, and that it was a fact that my wife was on the flight. So we waited. We called different airlines, people in the press, people, friends who knew friends who might in some ways know a little more than what I myself could fathom. And we kind of worked the phones for a good 2, 3 hours. And nothing reliable, nothing confirmatory was forthcoming. And then at about close to noon was when I got through Twitter. Somebody had forwarded the passenger manifest, and then I tallied it with the passport numbers, the passenger names, and all that. And it seemed reasonably certain that Chandrika was on the flight. But yet, I said it wasn't a confirmed release. It wasn't a communication from the airline, so I should wait. So the wait continued, till almost 3, 4 in the evening. And then that's when we started getting news, by way of confirmation that indeed the flight was missing and the passenger manifest was released. And by then, the news is all over the television, including the fact that some Indian passengers were on board. I don't know how, but my wife's photograph and names were flashed, apparently, and I wasn't aware. I was, at that time, not so much glued to the television, but, managing my mother, and people had started flowing into the house, to inquire. And so already the mood had turned quite somber, and, there was a deathly silence in a way, as people started trooping in, and they would sit quietly, and, as if some calamity had struck. Maybe at that time, I didn't still register in my head that some calamity indeed had struck. So I think my anxiety at that time was to make sure that my mother did not hear it from some third party, that she didn't stumble upon news on television when she was watching it. So I kept her away from television for a while. I mean, these are silly things that we try and do to sort of make sure that people have a soft landing, for bad news. And so eventually I had to tell her, I had to get my sister over and have her around when I told her. So it was a difficult day. It is a day of just groping, trying to get information, be sure, be certain. And of course, there was no thought to what next. But I think that's as far as we could come by the end of the day. The search had resumed, and not resumed, it started at that time, if I recall. But one was also aware that it was nighttime, around those parts where a search was being undertaken. And we knew that, that nothing much was going to be forthcoming. So then there was a night-long wait, vigil, if you can call it that, to know and wait till the morning to see if there is something that might come as a break from the. There was a foreboding, I think, of something that was not a happy ending, something that was unpleasant. And I think it was just the hope that the morning will bring some better tidings. And that's how the day went.
It was remarkable to read from your book that during those initial hours, right, you actually were the source of strength for the others, the folks around you, and you had attributed that to the adrenaline with all the news coming in. That was something, that was just remarkable to read. Now, any accident is a tragedy, but, aviation accidents, they always grab the attention of people all over the world. Now, it's the whole world basically watched MH370 disappear, right? How did you navigate the media attention and constant speculation of those, the first few days?
Well, the fact of the matter is we didn't watch it disappear. It just disappeared. That apart. Yeah, I think there was a lot of curiosity about, the family and how they were dealing with the news. I think for the first 3, 4 days, the Chandrika's office effectively kept the press at bay, and they were fielding the questions. They were fielding the heightened press interest in what is going on. And there were calls coming in at home, which I didn't attend to because I think at that time, there was other things at home to manage, other people at home to manage. And yeah, there was a lot of adrenaline for sure because one just didn't know which way this whole episode is going to turn. And you are you're readying for bad news and you're hopeful for the best. And in that phase, I think I didn't have very much to say or engage with the press really at that time. But I think I think on the 5th or the 6th day was when I actually I had my first direct encounter with the press. I did a press conference. I thought it was important to draw attention to the fact that my own government, the airline industry in India, the passenger associations that are located in this country, nobody particularly had any word on the subject, no attempt to reach out. And this kind of incident doesn't happen now on a regular basis, for one to know what to do and what to expect. So I was hoping for some kind of perhaps information, assistance, guidance, some hand-holding, and nothing was forthcoming. And I thought it was important to just make this point loud and clear. So that's what I essentially tried doing in my first press conference. But I think as the days rolled, the interest from the press or the media didn't abate. And in fact, it just kind of kept growing and growing. And, with wall-to-wall coverage from some of the networks, there was a constant clamor to sort of get some sound bites, some clips, some word from the families. And I think that continued for quite a while. I had no experience engaging with the press. So in some way that it was demanding, it was exciting, it was trying at times, and it's frustrating at times. All of it, actually, because sometimes what you wish to get across is to be not felt critical or important by the receiver or by the host. And something else that you may have said, seems to acquire a greater significance, unintended by me, So it took me a while to understand how this whole thing works. And so it took, and once I figured, what this whole thing is about, for instance, you just get 2 minutes, of air time. And at the pace that I speak, I might not get too much, out. So I had to learn what it is to be able to even say my piece in those 2 minutes. And there are many lessons like this. And sometimes, the interviewer has a certain agenda, which you may or may not wish to pander to. And you still want to get across the message out. So you figure how to make that happen. So there are various things that happen over the months, actually, that helped me, I think, to understand, not just about how to work with the press or the media, but also how to become more articulate about both what one is feeling, what one is thinking, and what one is attempting to do in a way that is meaningful to anybody who's listening on the other side. Right? So that was the overall experience as I recall.
And it is disheartening, but sadly not surprising that there wasn't much support from the government or authorities in those days. It's sad, it's just sad. Now, when did it all eventually sink in? And at that point, how did you process the grief?
Okay, let me say that I think it took perhaps 3-4 months before I had to come face to face with the reality that there is somebody missing. There is somebody whose presence was, always there, now only present in recall, in memory, in her absence. And this was a very difficult phase because the fact of the matter is the house we built, every little piece, every corner of the house had her imprint. And it was things that we did jointly. Every hour of the day had something to remind me of her. And so it was not something that I could put aside or, like a car wipe, I just sort of use it to wish it away, wash it away. So it was not easy. And for quite a while, for instance, I just let things be. I think I went through a certain phase of inaction, bordering, I think, on paralysis, perhaps, a lack of interest in anything, a difficulty to actually cognitively, mentally, intellectually engage with anything at any level of detail. And it took me, I think, 3-4 months before I could probably concede that perhaps what I'm experiencing is also some form of trauma. So while at the surface, there was responsibility. I have a mother who was knocking 80. At that time, of course, she was around 70 plus. I had a daughter who was studying in Delhi. I had some responsibility towards them. I had a house to manage, a household to take care of, and I couldn't just wish it away. And so at some level, the daily chores of existence, I think, just kept carrying on. But on a number of fronts, I just let things slide. And there were also, I think, many, many, many evenings which were rather quiet, lonely, and very tough to navigate. Because I think many decisions were just left pending, for instance, because I think most things we did by consulting, by asking, by informing, and so on. And in the absence of that input, that companionship, I didn't quite want to sort of act or take any call on anything. And so there was a slide. I mean, undoubtedly there was a slide. Till I suppose I reached a point where I said, this is not going to make things any better. This is not going to change things. And not doing anything is not a way forward. It's a slide back, and so on and so forth. There are many such, I think, moments of self-talk, which effectively nudged me out of this state of complete inaction and I had to effectively tell myself that the future beckons, right? And it has to be a future without my wife. And memory is a difficult thing to engage with because at that time they were still very fresh. They were very real. They would flood at times, and and at very unexpected moments, and something would trigger, and then you would sort of get drowned in it. So it took sorry. So it took a while, I think, to simply know how to stay anchored, stay real, stay in the moment, be present, take charge, and that from a certain point in time, I had to say, now this innings is mine. This call now, any call is my call. I take charge, and help is welcome, input is welcome, but it has to be my call. So I think it took me quite a while, many months, before I could actually come to a point where one could simply say, okay, there's no going back. There is only a way forward. I think that's what it was like those early months, at least for sure.